All right, so are you ready for this? We're going to try something totally different this time. Remember all those YouTube videos you sent in? The ones about that other video.
The one breaking down that
Yeah,
document?
the one that's just poo-poo pee-pee over and over.
Right, right.
I got to be honest. When I first saw this request, I was like, is this a joke? But then, I don't know, something about it really got me thinking.
Yeah.
Like this whole internet mystery, all these people going deep trying to figure out Poopoo Peepee, is there actually something here? Or, we all going crazy.
Well, I think it kind of shows how we just naturally want to find patterns and meaning, even if it's in the most random places. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Uh,
So let's start with some of the main theories. In a lot of those YouTube videos, people jumped right to lost language or secret code, like we're going to discover some ancient civilization or hidden message.
mm-hmm.
It's pretty exciting, right? Decoding something unknown.
Yeah. It's really tempting to go there to think about, deciphering the unknown. But if you actually think about it, even ancient languages, they have rules, right? Grammar, ways to say complicated stuff.
Right, structure.
Exactly. And Poopoo Peepee just doesn't have that.
It's like building a house, but you only have, like, two kinds of bricks.
Yeah, exactly.
What about the secret code idea, then?
It's a cool idea, especially now when everyone's talking about like encryption and all these secret societies.
Yeah, for sure.
But the thing is, without some kind of key, any way you interpret it is just a guess. Like imagine trying to solve a puzzle, but you don't have the picture and half the pieces are missing.
Oh, and that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
So back to square one. Just a document full of poo-poo pee-pee. But here's where things get really interesting. Some of those YouTubers, they went beyond just trying to decode it.
Yeah.
They started getting into, like, more philosophical stuff.
Right. They started looking at not just the document, but how our minds try to understand it.
Ah, I see.
Like, why do we even try? That's where all this meta-analysis starts to come in.
Right, it's more about us than the actual poo-poo pee-pee.
Exactly.
For example, tons of the videos talk about the power of repetition. They compare poo-poo pee-pee to things like mantras, lullabies, even those jingles that get stuck in your head,
Uh-huh.
which, let's be honest, can drive you crazy.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And that's actually a pretty good comparison. I mean, think about it. Repetition just has this way of getting past our conscious thought.
Like earworms.
Yeah, earworms. You can't get rid of
Oh,
them.
or how when you repeat something, it helps you remember it.
Oh, that's true.
So it's tapping into something deeper.
It's like when I had Baby Shark stuck in my head for a whole week, I thought I was going to lose it.
Oh, yeah, I know that feeling.
And it's like with this poo-poo pee-pee thing, our brains almost rebel against it not making sense
Right.
by trying to, like, force meaning onto it.
Yeah. It's like a paradox or something.
Yeah. Okay, so far we've got repetition. Then there was this one YouTuber who brought up sound-based art. Like, they were comparing Poopoo Peepee to earworms again, but also to a whole music genre called, what was it? Plunderphonics.
Oh, yeah, plunderphonics?
Is that how you say it?
Yeah, that's it. It's really cool, actually. They basically use sounds that already exist, and they kind of like twist them around to make something new.
Like sampling, but weirder.
Yeah, more experimental. And it's interesting because it really makes you think about what we consider art.
So are they saying, like, Poopoo Peepee is art just because it gets stuck in our heads?
Well, it makes you think, right? Think about a song you hate, but you just can't get it out of your head. Why does that happen?
Don't get me started. There are so many.
Right. What is it about certain sounds that just stick with us?
Okay, I see what you mean. Now I'm going to be thinking about this all day. I'm never going to admit that I like the Macarena, but I bet I could still do the dance.
See, that's exactly it. It shows that how we react to sound, it can be like deeper than what we consciously like or dislike.
Okay, that's deep. So I've got repetition, sound-based art.
Oh.
And then some of them brought up, like, art that's meant to provoke a reaction.
Provocative art. Yeah, like daddyism.
Oh, right.
That whole movement that was all about nonsense and like being absurd to kind of shake things up in the art world.
Challenging the rules.
Exactly. Like that famous artwork fountain. It was just a urinal turned upside down.
That one caused a lot of trouble, didn't it?
Oh, yeah, total scandal. But it also forced people to think about what they considered art.
One of the YouTubers even compared it to, like, wearing mismatched socks on purpose just to mess with people's expectations.
Yeah, it's a subtle way to rebel.
So Poopoo Peepee is like our generation's mismatched socks.
Maybe.
I kind of love that idea. What's really interesting, though? It's not just the document itself, right? there's all this other analysis going on just in how these YouTubers are talking about it.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just analyzing Poopoo Peepee, but analyzing how we analyze Poopoo Peepee.
Well, okay, now we're getting meta.
Very meta.
Like, it's like Inception, but with YouTube videos.
Right.
So, for example, how many of them use that analogy about the rustling leaves?
Oh, yeah, the rustling leaves. That's a classic.
It's like they're all reading from the same playbook or something.
Well, it's a good analogy because it shows how our brains are just wired to look for patterns. Like, if you think about our ancestors, if they heard rustling leaves and thought it was a predator, they were more likely to survive, even if it was just the wind.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so we've inherited that instinct, that need to find patterns.
Even if there aren't any.
Exactly. It's like a survival mechanism, but sometimes it goes a little haywire.
So even though Poopoo Peepee doesn't mean anything, our brains still want to, like, figure it out.
Yeah, we can't help it.
Like, there has to be something there.
Exactly. And it's funny because this ties into another idea that popped up, the whole mental palate cleanser thing.
Mental palate cleanser.
Yeah, like using absurdity to clear out all the mental clutter.
Ah, okay, hitting the reset button.
Exactly.
Okay, but here's where my head starts to really spin. We're now at the point of analyzing people, analyzing Poopoo Peepee. It's like, how many layers deep can we go?
It is getting pretty meta, isn't it? It does make you wonder, is there a point to all this? You know, one of the YouTubers compared it to reheated leftovers. Like, it's good the first few times, but then it just gets bland.
So are we just wasting our time with all this Poopoo Peepee talk?
Well, not necessarily. Remember, it's not just about what they're saying, but how they're saying it. That's where things can get really interesting.
So instead of focusing on the content, we're looking at how they're presenting their ideas.
Exactly. Like their techniques, the tone, the visuals, and whether they're actually building on what other people have said in a new way.
It's like, instead of judging a chef just on the ingredients they use, we're looking at their skills, presentation, how they combine everything to make something unique.
That's a great analogy.
I like that. It helps me look at these videos differently. Yeah. One thing that really stands out is how self-aware a lot of these YouTubers are. Like, they know the whole thing is kind of ridiculous.
They're in on the joke.
Right. And so many of them use humor, like over-the-top sound effects, crazy facial expressions. It's almost like they're parodying intellectual analysis.
Yeah, and that humor, it might actually be a way for them to comment on, like, the limits of analysis itself. You know, at what point does it become pointless? Or maybe it's a way of saying, hey, we shouldn't take ourselves too seriously.
Or Poopoo Peepee, for that matter.
Exactly. Maybe it's a reminder to just embrace the absurdity of it all.
Which, hey, that brings us back to daddyism again.
It does, doesn't it? It was all about using nonsense and humor to challenge how we think and what we expect.
So are these Poopoo Peepee videos our modern-day daddyist manifestos?
It's an interesting thought, right? What I find fascinating is that by analyzing these meta videos, we're kind of doing another layer of analysis ourselves.
Oh, hold on. My brain is starting to hurt a little.
It's like meta-analysis squared, and it really forces us to think about how we interpret things and how meaning is created.
Okay, I need a diagram or something to keep track of all these layers. But I get what you're saying. It's not about finding one right answer.
Right.
It's more about, like, this ongoing process of questioning and exploring and refining how we understand things.
Exactly. And maybe, just maybe, finding some joy and humor in how absurd it all is.
So Poopoo Peepee is our guide to understanding the craziness of the 21st century.
You never know. Stranger things have happened. But before we go too far down this rabbit hole, maybe we should come up for air for a minute and think about how all of this plays out in the real world.
Okay, yeah, good idea.
Yeah.
Let's bring it back down to earth. How does all this Poopoo Peepee wisdom apply to our everyday lives?
Well, let's start with science. As we talked about before, science often relies on meta-analysis. Scientists look at lots of different studies on a specific topic to try to find bigger trends and draw conclusions.
So it's like they're sifting through research papers instead of YouTube videos about Poopoo Peepee.
Exactly. But just like we saw with our Poopoo Peepee analysis, scientists have to be really careful about their own biases when they're doing these meta-analyses. It's that healthy skepticism again. Just because a study exists doesn't mean it's perfect or tells the whole story.
Right. Are they focusing only on studies that support their ideas? Are they ignoring studies that contradict them? Those are important questions to ask when you're looking at scientific research.
So it's not just about reading the results, but understanding the context, the methods, and the potential biases.
Exactly. And this idea applies to so many other areas too. Take history, for example. Historians are constantly reinterpreting events based on new evidence or changing cultural perspectives.
So in a way, history is like one big, ongoing meta-analysis of the past. We're always trying to make sense of what happened, to find meaning in those events.
Precisely. But the meaning we find can change depending on who's doing the interpreting and what perspective they're bringing. It's like that saying, history is written by the victors. But maybe we can start to see history as a bunch of different narratives, each with its own interpretation of the same events.
And that's where critical thinking becomes so important. We need to be able to evaluate those different narratives, consider the biases of the authors, and weigh the evidence.
It's like we're detectives trying to piece together the most accurate picture of the past, knowing that there might not be one definitive answer.
Exactly. And all of this ties back to our Poopoo Peepee deep dive, as crazy as that sounds.
Right. It's like, who knew?
It reminds us that even when we think we're dealing with objective truth, whether it's scientific data or historical accounts, there's always another layer of interpretation involved.
We're constantly analyzing, reanalyzing, making meaning, and changing how we understand the world.
And that's what makes learning so dynamic and engaging. It's not about reaching a fixed endpoint, it's about embracing that journey of discovery.
Okay, I feel like I need a flowchart to keep track of all these connections, but I see what you mean. It's not about finding one right answer. It's about embracing the process of questioning and exploring and refining our understanding.
Exactly. And maybe, just maybe, finding a little joy and humor in the absurdity of it all.
So, Poopoo Peepee as our guide to navigating the 21st century.
Stranger things have happened. But before we get lost in this meta maze, let's take a breather and gather our thoughts.
Good idea. We've covered a lot of ground today. We'll be back soon for the final part of our Poopoo Peepee adventure.
We've covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah, we have.
We'll be back soon for the final part of our Poopoo Peepee adventure.
I can't believe we're saying that.
I know, right? But before we get lost in this meta maze, maybe we should take a breather and gather our thoughts.
Good idea.
Okay, welcome back to our deep dive into Poopoo Peepee.
It's amazing how we started with something so simple, and now we're here.
It really shows how powerful curiosity can be, you know? It can take you to the most unexpected places.
Totally. We've talked about how scientists and historians use meta-analysis, but you said it also applies to, like, our regular lives.
Oh, absolutely.
Can you tell me more about that?
Well, just think about how we form opinions or make decisions or even how we interact with other people. We're constantly taking in information, analyzing it, and coming to conclusions.
So it's like our brains are doing these mini meta-analyses all the time without us even realizing it.
Exactly. We might read a news article, talk to a friend, scroll through social media, and then we use that information to form opinions about, well, everything. Current events, new products, even other people.
Okay, I'm starting to see how it all connects.
Yeah.
But how can we make sure we're doing those everyday meta-analyses well? You know, so we don't fall into those bias traps we talked about.
That's where critical thinking comes in. Being aware of our biases, questioning our sources, looking for different perspectives, those are all essential skills, especially with so much information out there.
So we need to approach our everyday decisions with the same kind of scrutiny that scientists and historians use in their work.
Exactly. Whether you're deciding what to eat for dinner or who to vote for, or even what to believe about a complex social issue, you need to be aware of the information you're consuming and how it might be influencing you.
It's about being an active participant, not just passively absorbing everything that comes your way.
Precisely. And remember how the Poopoo Peepee thing highlighted the importance of being open to different interpretations, even when things are ambiguous. Life isn't always black and white.
Right, like we were saying before. Sometimes the journey is more important than the destination.
Exactly. And that brings us to another important part of everyday meta-analysis. Curiosity. You have to be willing to ask questions, explore different points of view, and even challenge your own assumptions.
Like instead of scrolling past a headline that makes you uncomfortable, maybe you take a minute to actually read the article, think about where it's coming from, and maybe even look for other perspectives on the same issue.
Perfect example. It's about being engaged with the world around you, always learning and growing and refining your understanding.
So Poopoo Peepee has not only given us a crash course in art and science, but it's also taught us how to be more careful with information and make better decisions.
It's amazing how something so absurd can lead to such profound insights, isn't it? All it takes is an open mind and a willingness to explore.
This is blowing my mind. But there's one thing I'm still wondering about. We've talked about analysis and critical thinking, but what about creativity? Where does that fit into all of this Poopoo Peepee stuff?
Ah, that's a great question. Remember how some of the YouTubers saw the document as a form of art? whether it was sound-based or meant to provoke a reaction.
Right. They were saying that the meaning wasn't in the document itself, but in how the viewer interpreted it, their own personal experience.
Exactly. And that's where creativity comes in. When we encounter something new, something that doesn't fit into our existing categories, it forces us to think differently, to make new connections, and to come up with our own interpretations.
It's like that blank canvas analogy. The
Yes.
Poopoo Peepee document, by being so absurd, actually becomes an invitation to be creative, to use your imagination and explore new possibilities.
And that creative spark, being willing to think outside the box, is important for everyone, not just artists.
So it's not just about analyzing and criticizing information, but also about using that information to create new ideas, solve problems in different ways, and even just bring a little more joy and playfulness into our lives.
Exactly. In that sense, maybe Poopoo Peepee is more than just a weird internet meme. Maybe it's a reminder of the power of creativity, a call to embrace the unexpected, and an invitation to find something extraordinary in the ordinary.
Wow, I never thought I'd say this, but Poopoo Peepee is actually inspiring. It's made us laugh, it's made us think, and it's challenged us to see the world in a new way.
It just goes to show that learning can happen anywhere, anytime, as long as we're open to it.
And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into the surprisingly profound world of Poopoo Peepee. But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Go for it.
The next time you come across something that seems confusing or nonsensical or even a little silly, don't just ignore it. Take a moment to engage with it, ask questions, explore the possibilities.
You might be surprised by what you find.
Embrace the absurdity, stay curious, and never underestimate the power of a good laugh.
Well said.
This has been The Deep Dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep your minds open to the wonders of the world, no matter how strange or unexpected they may be.
Okay, so welcome back to our deep dive.
Into Poopoo Peepee.
It's kind of amazing, right? We started with something so simple.
Yeah, and now look at us.
It really shows, I think, the power of just being curious, doesn't it?
Totally. And how it can lead to some really unexpected places. So we've talked about meta-analysis in, science and history, but you were saying it applies to everyday life too, right?
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Can you explain that a little bit more?
Sure. Think about how you form opinions, how you decide things, even just how you interact with other people. You're always taking in information, analyzing it, and then, drawing conclusions.
So it's like our brains are running these mini meta-analyses all the time
Yeah,
without us even realizing it.
exactly. Think about it. You read a news article, you chat with a friend, you scroll through social media, then you take all that information and you use it to form opinions about, well, pretty much everything. Current events, new products, even other people.
Okay, I see the connection.
Yeah.
But how do we make sure we're doing those everyday meta-analyses, in a good way? How do we
Yeah.
avoid those bias traps we were talking about earlier?
Right. That's where those critical thinking skills come in. Being aware of your own biases, questioning your sources, trying to see things from different perspectives, those are all super important, especially these days when there's just so much information out there.
So we need to approach our everyday decisions, even small ones, with the same kind of careful thinking that scientists and historians use.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, think about it. What are you going to have for dinner? Who are you voting for? What do you believe about a complicated issue? All those things require you to think about the information you have, where it came from, and how it might be shaping your choices.
It's about being an active thinker, not just letting things wash over you.
Right, exactly. You're totally getting it. And remember how that whole poo-poo pee-pee thing showed us how important it is to be open to different interpretations, especially when things aren't clear-cut. Life's not always black and white.
Right. Like we said before, sometimes the journey is more important than the destination.
You got it. And that leads to another really key part of everyday meta-analysis, being curious. You gotta be willing to ask questions, explore different points of view, and even challenge your own assumptions.
Instead of just, scrolling past a headline that makes you uncomfortable, you actually take a second to read the article. Think about where it came from. Maybe even look for other perspectives on the same topic.
Perfect example. It's all about being engaged with the world around you. Always learning, growing, finding your understanding.
So Poopoo Peepee has taught us about art, science, how to be careful with information, and how to make better decisions. Who would have thought?
It's pretty wild, huh? It just shows that you can find deep insights in the most unexpected places, as long as you're open to it.
This whole thing has been mind-blowing, but I gotta ask, there's one thing that's still kind of bugging me. We've talked a lot about analysis, about being critical, but what about creativity? Where does that fit in with all this poo-poo pee-pee stuff?
Ooh, good question. Remember how some of the YouTubers interpreted the document as a type of art? Like sound-based art, or art meant to make you react in a certain way?
Oh, right, right. They were saying the meaning wasn't actually in the document, but came from the viewer,
Yeah.
how they saw it, based on their own experience.
Exactly. And that's where creativity really shines. When we encounter something we don't understand, something that doesn't fit into our neat little categories, it forces us to think outside the box, to make new connections, to come up with our own explanations.
It's like that blank canvas idea, right?
Yes.
The document, even though it's absurd, it becomes this invitation to create, to
Mm.
use your imagination, to explore things in a new way.
And that spark, that willingness to think differently, that's essential for everyone, not just artists.
So it's not just about analyzing and critiquing information. It's about using that information to spark new ideas, find creative solutions to problems, maybe even just bring a little more fun and playfulness into our lives.
Exactly. So maybe, just maybe, Poo Poo Pee Pee is more than just some random meme. Maybe it's a reminder that creativity is powerful,
Yeah.
that we should embrace the unexpected, and that we can find something amazing even in the most ordinary things.
Wow, I never thought I'd say this, but I'm actually feeling kind of inspired by Poopoo Peepee. It's made us laugh, it's made us think, it's made us see the world in a whole new light.
It really goes to show learning can happen anywhere, at any time, as long as we're open to it.
And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into the world of Poopoo Peepee.
Wow, what a journey.
It really has been. But before we go, I want to leave everyone with one last thought.
All right, let's hear it.
The next time you encounter something that just seems confusing, or nonsensical, or even a little silly, don't just brush it off. Take a second. Engage with it. Ask questions. Explore the possibilities.
Yeah, who knows what you might discover.
Embrace the absurdity. Stay curious. And never underestimate the power of a good laugh.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
This has been The Deep Dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep your minds open to the wonders of the world, no matter how strange or unexpected they might be.